Learning how to look is a skill. It takes effort, but you can do it. One of the great actors of the 20th century, Sir Laurence Olivier, offered this advice. You must constantly observe a walk, a limp, a run, how a head inclines to one side when listening, the twitch of an eyebrow, the hand that picks the nose when it thinks no one is looking, the mustache puller, the eyes that never look at you, the nose that sniffs long after the cold is gone. But how? The brain ignores almost everything that we encounter. In other words, the brain mostly does not pay attention to what it sees, hears, and feels. It has to be that way. If we tried to notice everything, our brains would explode. Our eyes naturally dart around a scene. These quick movements are called saccades. Look at this painting by Pieter Bruegel called The Fight Between Carnival and Lent. When we look at the scene, we jump around like this. From these tiny pieces of the whole, we construct a complete picture in our minds. How do we fill in those blanks? Well, we draw from our existing knowledge and prejudices, what we think should be there, and instantaneously produce the complete image in our mind's eye. It all starts with those tiny fragments that come from the split-second saccades. The challenge is to move beyond automatic looking, where we see fragments and our brains fill in the gaps. The challenge is to look deliberately, consciously, with care, and without presuppositions about what we're seeing, as if your life depends on it. This is not easy. It's hard. It takes training, as if you were going to be a carpenter or any other skilled worker. Quick, what do you assume when you see this picture? I encountered this scene on Wall Street in New York City the morning of Election Day in 2016. Who do you imagine might be driving this car? Ready? When I turned around, I was surprised to see a black man wearing camouflage. This was not the typical Trump supporter, but there he is. To notice details, you have to be deliberate. You have to train yourself to direct your attention. You can't get lazy. That means developing what the Zen Buddhists call a beginner's mind. We have to forget what we know or think we know and look at the world with fresh eyes. First, playing with saccades. Go where your eyes want to go. But then, when you get there, pay attention not just to the obvious, but also to what's nearby. Let me introduce you to a game called Super Saccades. See this grid of letters? Move up and down on the outer columns, then the insides of the outer columns, then start moving to the inner columns, up and down middle, up and down middle. In this game, rather than doing what your eyes do automatically, jumping around, you are taking control. You are deliberately directing your attention. Okay, let's develop this skill as an observer. Look at the Bruegel painting again. Go wherever your eyes take you, kind of like this. Then when you find a point where your eyes latch onto, look beyond that point. Look at the surrounding area. Look at the whole story being told nearby. Then find another point and look around it. Find another point and look around it. Find another, and another, and another, and another, and another. Observing, looking for details, is a game. Start with automatic actions, then build on those automatic actions to observe more. The more you observe, the more raw materials you have for your writing. Now it's your turn. Go someplace quiet to watch the passing scene, a street, a park, a school campus, a mall, or a workplace. Watch the scene for a minute and write down all of the pieces of the scene you noticed right away. Those are your saccades. Look again. This time, pay attention to what's near those pieces. How does this process fill in your portrait? Second, frame and reframe. Decide, deliberately, not automatically, what area you want to focus on. Imagine putting a picture frame around a scene, which includes some details but also excludes other details. Frames give you a way to look deliberately. Artists use frames to get the viewer to look at some details and not to look at other details. You need to do the same. Create different frames in order to pay attention to different sets of details. You have to decide, okay, I'm going to look here, and then now here, carefully at the particulars, in this case, the celebrators with their music and food and tomfoolery. Then zoom out again to consider the broader picture. Maybe this time you can notice patterns and arrangements that you missed before. You might then look for another frame, and another, and another. 3. Focus on particulars, pieces of the scene that might have special meaning for whatever you're writing about. The brain evolved to be lazy, to minimize effort, so we have to develop skills at paying attention to particular things. We have to work to notice things that our brain wants us to avoid. Consider this image. Look at it one way, and it looks like a duck with the beak on the left. Look at it another way, it resembles a rabbit with ears on the left. Now try to see both animals, duck and rabbit, at the same time. You can't. If you focus on one, you can't focus on the other. So we can pay attention, conscious attention, to just one thing at a time. If I look here, I can't look there. So focus on what? So look at different shapes. Look also for sizes, big and little. Actually, for every scene, look for S, M, L, XL, small, medium, large, and extra large. Also look for contrasts. Contrasts not only provide variety, they also help us make sense of things. We can understand things only when they are contrasted with something else. And look for light and shadows. Light reveals, but also sometimes blinds us. So sometimes look in the light, but also pay close attention to what's in the shadow. And also look for colors, which reveal the character of people and places, and therefore the action with people and places. And also texture. Is it rough or smooth, natural feeling, or artificial? Does it allow a grip or not? Does it feel comfortable or not? And movement. What does movement reveal about a scene? Is it regular or intermittent? Is it dull and monotonous, or is it exciting? Does it bore or thrill or scare people? Is it natural or man-made? Is it part of the rhythms of life or a violation of natural rhythms? Now it's your turn. Take a picture of a busy or complex scene with your phone. Isolate one distinct part of the picture to examine in detail. Linger on that piece until you have a list of 20 details. 4. Look for relationships. All stories, well, all life actually, is about relationships. So, how do men and women relate to each other? Adults and young people and their peers, insiders and outsiders, and more. Look for the details that might help us understand relationships. Start with juxtapositions. What can we learn by putting things different next to each other, or nearby, or far away? Show how individuals relate to other people, how they stand apart from others in the way that they move. Also show before and after. What is something like at the beginning, and what is something like at the end? Now break that down into pieces. Every beginning and end is actually a series of beginnings and ends. So, what are the beginnings and ends in the middle of a scene? Observe things in their surroundings. Every object operates in a larger context, right? So, notice the relationship between things and their larger locations. Look for opposites, not just how they can be in tension and opposition, but also how they can complement each other. Now it's your turn. Go to 2 places, one public, one private. Watch a scene involving 2 or more people. Identify at least 10 details about that scene, what they look like, how they behave, what resulted. Then go deeper. Identify something you missed for each of your 10 details. 5. Look in odd and unfamiliar ways. Art teachers like Betty Edwards tell their students to turn pictures upside down. That way, they can pay close attention to the shapes and colors and shades rather than focusing on what they see automatically. Take a look at this picture of a fiddler from long ago North Carolina. Now, pay closer attention to the details when you turn it upside down. You're not seeing the fiddler, you're seeing the shapes and the angles, even the movement. You might miss that if you were looking at him right side up. Another trick is to break a scene into tiny pieces and then to look intently at those pieces. If you avoid seeing the whole picture, you can notice the parts much better. Here's the fiddler again, broken up into a grid. See how you can pay closer attention to the details by breaking the picture into pieces? It might seem odd to focus on pieces, but if your job is to show the reader something new, you have to find something new first, and you can only do that when you escape the obvious ways of seeing things. Now it's your turn. Get a picture out of a magazine or a book. Draw a grid on that picture and draw a similar grid on a piece of paper. Square by square, reproduce that picture. Now, what fresh details did you notice with your square by square examination of the picture? Let's look back on the road we've traveled one more time. Seeing is a process. It starts with saccades and then framing and reframing. Then we zoom in on particulars, look for relationships, and then examine the picture in odd ways.